If you're looking to grow and you're trying to figure out how to make all this data that you're getting from your business, how to make that work for you, that can be tough. I spoke with Mark Stouse. He's the founder, CEO of Proof Analytics, and analytics is actually the way that you can analyze this data. Like Mark said, you don't just get crude oil and put it in your car. You need a refinery that turns that into gas. That's kind of the same thing. Taking data and trying to look at that, it's really hard. But unless you have an analytics solution or a reason to, or a method to go through analytics, it's going to make it really difficult to understand everything. So he goes through what you need to be thinking about and how you can be thinking about it, and also what they've done as their company has grown. So I think it's really important for you to see this one. It's going to be really good for you.
Welcome to SaaS-Story in the Making, the podcast that features the people who made the software world what it is today and the leaders who are shaping the future of technology. Here's your host, Matt Wolach.
Hey, welcome to SaaS-Story in the Making. This is Matt. I am your host. I'm super excited to have you here. Thank you very much. This is going to be a really good session. By the way, if you don't know me, I am a SaaS sales coach. So if you have a SaaS company or your SaaS leader looking to grow, I help companies scale. I help them understand how to put a process in place so they can close more deals and get a much better valuation. And I'm really looking forward to today's session. I've got Mark Stouse with me. Mark, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Happy Friday to you.
Happy Friday to you as well. Although everybody listening right now, it's Tuesday for them, but Friday for us right now. So we're happy.
Yeah, somewhere in the world, when someone's listening to this, it's going to be Friday, right?
Yeah, so, at some point, you're right.
and you kind of have to say, I don't care who you are or what your job is or how much you enjoy it, right? Fridays are Fridays.
Mm-hmm. Very true. Well, let me tell everybody about you, Mark. So Mark, he's the chairman and CEO at Proof Analytics. It's the only marketing resource management software delivered on Salesforce. Proof MRM includes Proof's award-winning automated proof marketing mix modeling analytics. Lots of really cool stuff that these guys are doing. I can't wait to learn more about that. Mark also, he's a podcast host himself. He's a host at Accelerating Value. Definitely check out his weekly podcast there. He's also a partner at Vaulting Ventures. That's a family-owned office that invests in companies that are disrupting current approaches to key corporate functions such as HR, marketing, sales, and R&D. Once again, Mark, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm happy to be here. I always enjoy these kinds of conversations.
Oh, likewise, for sure. So tell me, what have you been up to lately, and what's coming up for you?
Well, actually, I realize that a lot of people are hearing this later, right? But one thing that's really cool that just happened is that we did a major new product launch on Proof MRM on Salesforce. We did it with Salesforce, so we're an OEM partner of Salesforce. And this is really exciting, particularly going into the period of turbulence and uncertainty and fear and everything else, right, that everybody is kind of feeling right now. So MRM as a category has been around for a while. There's some really awesome companies in terms of legacy players, Primo, Allocadia, companies like that. You've also got horizontal type stuff. So Primo and Allocadia are very focused on marketing. You have horizontal stuff like Workfront that's owned by Adobe. But all this is really expensive, and it's been very heavyweight, very difficult and expensive to implement, not just to license. And so in talking with Salesforce, this all started probably a year or so ago, we saw a real opportunity to massively disrupt the space in a way that's very constructive and entirely positive for customers. So Proof MRM on Salesforce is the only MRM platform available on Salesforce, native to Salesforce Lightning. That means you get automatic data sync with any Salesforce clouds. It, of course, can pull data in from other non-Salesforce sources as well. But it's super easy to set up. And instead of being like anywhere from $250 to $300 a seat per month, this is $49 per seat per month.
Wow, that's amazing. Can you explain also what MRM is for our audience who's wondering?
Yeah, so an MRM platforms historically has been something that you had to be an enterprise marketer to really be familiar with at all, mainly because it's been so expensive and heavy to implement. But an MRM platform is like an ERP for marketing, right? And most professions have something like this. This is a single source of truth platform, in this case for marketing, that does planning, budgeting, all your financials for your marketing team, digital asset management, data management, approvals, compliance. I mean, you name it, it's in there, right? Workflows, all this kind of stuff. So it is, it's where a fully mature marketing organization ultimately ends up. The biggest problem, again, has been the extremely high cost of implementing something like this. And it's what has limited the category in many, many ways. And so we believe that we can really blow it open. And, the bottom line here is marketing budgets are being cut. There's a lot of pressure for additional transparency and accountability by the business to marketing. I mean, not a new development, but far more intense than it has been. And so they need this. And yet, hey, why would you want to pay more than you absolutely need to for something like this? Because you really want to spend your money on campaigns, right? So this is really where we're headed with it. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see how it develops.
I love it. I think it's great stuff. At what size of a marketing team, what scale would be good to think about something like this?
Well, I think historically the answer would have been solidly enterprise, right? So let's call it Fortune 1000. I think that with the much easier implementation without losing any strength of the offering, with the fact that there is, the integrated MMM, which is the whole performance analytics piece, the, really true computed attribution and restacking of investments. And then the price at $49 a seat, whether you buy, one seat or 10,000 seats, it's $49. You can add whenever you want to. So now I think we have opened up the mid-market in a really, really big way, potentially even the higher part of the small business market. But I think that for sure the mid-market is now, going to be really interesting. It's going to be a lot of action.
That's fantastic. I think it's something that companies in that mid-market would absolutely need. But I want to kind of go back. How did Proof Analytics come to be? What was the genesis behind it?
Well, I'm sort of a rare breed of person in the sense that I am a technology CMO, large company CMO, turned software CEO. So I see all this from both sides of the table. The need for accountability, the need for proof of ROI, the need to be able to manage marketing like the investment fund that it is. And so you're essentially a wealth manager for your company. That's the way I would characterize you as a marketer. And so I started, I guess this was almost 20 years ago. I made what turned out to be a really pivotal decision in my own career to be increasingly analytics led. And that was a really big journey. There's not time to go into all the ins and outs of it, but let's just say that I started from a position of near zero knowledge around analytics to being a consumer as a CMO of heavy duty analytics. And being able to use it very effectively. At Honeywell, for example, we were able to increase our budgets year on year multiple times, given the fact that we could show not only the value, but we could show what additional spend would forecast in terms of additional value, right? So, and Honeywell is a very rigorous company when it comes to this kind of thing, not exactly populated with huge believers in marketing. And so this was a tremendous success, but we were having to spend $5, $6, $7, $8 million a year on analytics just to do this, right? Just to power it. I mean, we had to overhire. We had a huge data science team just to get the speed of the analytic feedback to where we needed it to be in order for things to be relevant. Mm-hmm. And so it was very obvious to me that this was a classic automation opportunity. And so some years ago, I got together with some family offices and a bunch of people who had, some of which had been on previous teams of mine in different companies, and we formed Proof and started to build it. And it's been quite a ride, to say the least.
That's amazing. So cool to hear how that all happened and kind of where the ideas come from. That's really, really neat. But I want to ask, if you're a marketer, how can data help you make better decisions?
Well, data by itself doesn't help you make better decisions. Data, by definition, is about the past. For you to be able to measure it, whatever it is, that is data, right? And that means it's in the past. Mm-hmm. So while it is a measurement of past performance, and as such can be valuable in certain ways, it's not by itself. You can't plan the future based on past data. Past is not prologue, particularly not now, right? If you look at, so what we're really talking about now is analytics. The difference between analytics and data, they're both necessary and they're very symbiotic with each other, obviously, right? One is sort of, data is oil. A lot of people have heard this analogy, right? And analytics is the refinery for that oil, because you can't burn West Texas crude in your car. That is not happening. That's not going to work, right? You've got to have a refinery to produce the gasoline that then powers the car. And that's exactly what analytics is. And so analytics is about establishing the relationships that exist, or in some cases don't exist, between a bunch of things that you're doing and other people are doing and that are being done to you and your goals, right? So not to mix metaphors here, but this is actually a lot like a GPS on your phone. The GPS on your phone says, this is where you are. And Matt, this is where you want to go. You've said this is your destination. And you've picked a route. So in business, this would be kind of like a route to value, right? You need to get to this sales outcome or whatever it is, right? And you're cruising along and it's tracking your progress in your car. And it's also tracking all of these environmental factors around you that could either impede or in some cases improve your progress towards your goal. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden it says, hey, Matt, guess what? You're on the best route ever, but now there's an accident ahead. Things have changed. There's, traffic is piling up. And if you stay on this path, you're going to be like an hour late to your meeting. But if we reroute you and you go left and you go right, left, right, and whatever, right, you're going to only be 10 minutes late. So let's go do that. That is exactly what automated marketing and mix modeling does for marketing. Because it's not just looking at what you control, it's also looking at all the things you don't control. It could be the macroeconomic picture, it could be your competitors' actions, it could be whatever, right? And it's showing you how you need to adjust in the face of changing realities. So if you look, this will be my last comment on this, unless you want more, but if you look at our customers over the last, say, 3 years, if you look at their analytics for 2019, 2020, 2021, and 2022 year to date, that is a perfect example of what I'm talking about, because what worked in one of those years was not what was really working in the other years. So if you had just said, even in 2020, if you'd used 2020 to plan for 2021, so looking back on it, we could say, these 2 years sort of felt similar to a lot of people. And yet the analytics show you that that's not the case at all, that what was working, what was a really great investment in 2020 had shifted, right? It had changed for 2021 and certainly now for 2022. And so you've got to be able to keep up. And that's the biggest issue today for marketers, is keeping up. And if you're just looking at data, you're not keeping up. In fact, you're just in the past. Totally. You're driving, as the old saying goes, you're looking in the rearview mirror as you drive forward.
Not a good way to do it, for sure. So looking at your own company, Proof Analytics, you guys have been around for a few years now. What would you say, Mark, were some of the best things that you did along your way that helped you get where you are now?
I would have to say that you make a lot of mistakes. I don't care who you are. I don't care how much knowledge you bring to a startup. You're still going to make a lot of mistakes.
Agreed.
And so the mistakes are extremely unfun in the moment, but they typically translate into some of the best things in the future, right?
Very true.
For example, one of the reasons why we pivoted on price and did a lot of this stuff is that we were seeing that, along with most enterprise SaaS companies, our sales velocity was just too long, right? It took too long to close big deals. And we were essentially elephant hunting. And the big reason for that, whether it's Proof or anyone else, is people's sense of risk is so high, right? So, and we realized that going into a down economy, that sense of risk was going to be intensified even further. And so if we needed to take significant steps to mitigate that and to change the game. And so that's one of the reasons, other than just kind of being in very general terms, thinking it's the right thing to do, period, right? In helping people buy faster, we're also helping ourselves, right? And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. That's business in a nutshell, right? So I think that's an example of how I would answer that question. It is, I think one of the hardest things for any startup is, particularly a startup that is bringing something, reasonably revolutionary to the space, is that they haven't been around long enough to have built up a brand reputation bank of confidence and trust. And this is actually the number one reason why startups require so much outside investment, typically, is just to be able to sustain themselves long enough to begin to have some confidence and trust in the marketplace, right?
Agreed.
If they didn't have that outside investment, a lot of this stuff would never happen at all, or it sure as hell wouldn't last the year, right? So I think that is, if I were to do this again, whether Proof again or some other new company in the future, right? I think that I would look at average deal velocity as a really super important metric, arguably the most important metric, because it says so much about sustainability, viability, customer acceptance, customer sense of risk. It's a proxy metric for a lot of things.
I agree. I like it. And it's something I teach my clients on. And you kind of mentioned it. How do we get them kind of over themselves and away from overthinking it and realizing that this is the answer that they need? Like you said, sales is a win win. If you have a great product, then they're going to benefit a lot from it. And if you do your job really well, you're going to make their business better. If you do your job really well of selling them and getting them to say yes, sign on the dotted line, as it were, then they
Right.
are going to be better off because of your solution. And so it's really about, like you said, removing that sense of risk and making it that not getting the product is risky. If you don't have this, you're going to miss out. Getting them to understand what they are losing because they won't have it is really critical. Something I train a lot on. I'm glad you spoke on that.
Well, I think the other part to it, even in many ways, based on our market research, the conversations that we've had with many different prospects and customers, going forward, the even more important than price or even product, in some respects, are the terms. So we're seeing a huge backlash uh, in the SaaS marketplace in general against ARR contracts, that they pose too great a risk, right? And they actually, in general, double the length of deal velocity, right?
Wow.
It's right because there's so much risk mitigation that has to happen in advance of entering into an ARR contract. And if you think about the promise of SaaS originally, it was really MRR, right? It
Mhm.
was,
Absolutely.
and also this whole idea that that there's a price hike year on year for SaaS sort of defies the definition of SaaS in general, right? Unless you are substantially increasing the value of the product, right?
Sure.
If anything, it ought to commoditize the space, right? And so I think that that's the other part to this. If you want a license to proof MRM, in year one, it's mandated by us that it's MRR, right?
Mm.
We want you to be able to say at any time in the first year, which is usually about how long it takes for people to prove it out to themselves, right? If at any time this doesn't work for you, it doesn't matter why. It could be 100% the customer's issues, right? It doesn't matter to us, right? We want you to be happy. And so you can punt, right? You can say, no, I'm done.
Wow.
And I think that's really super important. I mean, and the early results on this would prove this out. I mean, just in 10 days since we announced this whole new product and or product upgrade really and new pricing, we've sold over 1,200 seats, right? I mean, it's just in 10 days. I mean, it's just insane.
That's awesome. Congrats on that. And I agree. It's nice to be able to offer that monthly, and that's where SaaS kind of came from. That's why it came to prominence. So I think it's super important to understand the difference there. Really interesting to hear about the longer sales cycles with annual, and I totally believe it. I haven't seen the data, but it definitely makes a lot of sense. We're just kind of wrapping up here, Mark. So what advice would you give to new software leaders and founders who are starting out looking to grow? What would you say to them?
I would say, make it as, this is an outside in problem, right? If you approach this with yourself at the center, you're never going to get to where you need to go, right? You need to start with your customers. I mean, a lot of this sounds like old hat, right? But if it's old hat, why do so few people actually do it, right?
True.
So start with your customers, and it's not so much, although, I mean, the product matters. I mean, it really does. Okay. It's the table stakes in the whole deal, but it's so much more than that. It's the customer sense of risk. And particularly in SaaS, fair or not, right? I'm not going to judge that. Okay. But the way a lot of customers feel is that their SaaS vendor has, at a minimum, oversold them on the
Mm.
capabilities of their product. and at a maximum lied through their teeth about the capabilities of the product. And so the level of trust for vendors today is at an all-time low, right? This is what's driving. I mean, the correlations between levels of confidence and trust and average deal velocity are off the charts in terms of the strength of relationships, right? If people have a lot of confidence and trust in you, that will translate into faster and faster and faster deals and bigger deals over time as well, right?
Very
so
true.
I would just say, you got to make it super easy, and that does not mean you need to do a freemium offering. So that would be like totally distorting what I'm saying. What I'm really saying is, think about when you buy something that has any kind of significant risk attached to it for you, what are you trying to mitigate? Right? I mean, one of the big breakthroughs that I had personally on this was, I don't know, probably 2 years ago. We were talking about licensing this particular intent data product. And my number one thing, because they wanted an ARR contract, and I said, but what if we get into it, we're a quarter, 4 months into it, and it doesn't work? It sucks, right? It's not producing. Then I'm stuck with this product. And as I heard myself say this out loud in this meeting, it was like, ding, right? I mean, all of a sudden I was the customer, right? And so that's what I would say, right? Is you need to remove the barriers to people saying yes.
I think that's fantastic.
Opposed to saying we are the coolest thing on the planet, and if you don't buy, you're an idiot, right? I mean, no one actually says that, but if you listen to a lot of
feels
sales,
like it.
That's exactly the subtext.
Yep, I agree. Well, this has been awesome, Mark. I really appreciate you coming in and sharing everything. I want to make sure everybody can learn more about what you're doing at Proof Analytics. So how can our audience learn more?
Oh, that's actually very easy, right? So the URL is www.proofanalytics.ai. I'm also very active on LinkedIn. So you can find me there. And if you reach out to me, I absolutely will respond to you. No questions asked. It's my number one platform. I'm on Twitter as well. So if you want to, it's Mark Stouse, all one word. You can reach me there. I normally I would give out my email, but honestly, I can't make the same promise about email response that I can about LinkedIn, right? So
I'm kind of the same way.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. Well, we'll put all that in the show notes so everybody can connect with you there. Mark, this has been great. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
You bet. Thank you.
Absolutely. And everybody else out there, thank you for watching. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. You do not want to miss out on any of the cool upcoming guests that we have, like Mark, who are going to share their knowledge and insights just like he did. So hit that subscribe button. Also, give a rating. If you think this show is good, helpful, rate it. I'd like to see it. I'd like to see what you have to say about it as well. Thank you for coming. Really appreciate it. Take care. We'll see you next time.